during the Watergate investigation, it was discovered that there was a plan originated in the White House to surface a submarine off the coast of Cuba and paint the second coming of Christ over the island of Cuba using holograms. Which is well within our technology today. The idea was that since there is a large Catholic population in Cuba, they would be so upset by this vision that this would saturate the communication channels, the telephone system in Cuba, long enough for an invasion to take place.
How interesting. I never heard of that.
Well, I think that's a classic in psychological warfare, but that kind of manipulation is well understood, and I have personally investigated several apparently genuine UFO cases where there was in fact a manipulation. My conclusion, the conclusion of scientists working with me, was that there was in fact a manipulation taking place, and that it was not a hoax on the part of the witnesses, but a hoax on the part of somebody much better organized than them.
In December 1915, the New York Times reported that the inventor, Nikola Tesla, had filed patent applications on the essential parts of a machine, possibilities of which test a layman's imagination and promise a parallel of Thor shooting thunderbolts from the sky to punish those who had angered the gods. Suffice it to say that the invention will go through space with the speed of 300 miles per second, a manless ship without propelling engine or wings, sent by electricity to any desired point on the globe on its errand of destruction, if destruction its manipulator wishes to effect. It is not a time, said Dr. Tesla, to go into the details of this thing. It is founded upon a principle that means great things in peace. It can be used for great things in war. But I repeat, this is no time to talk of such things. Nikola Tesla told the writer that he stands ready to divulge to the United States government the secret of his teleforce, with which he said airplane motors would be melted at a distance of 250 miles away. And who remembers when the Soviets launched a giant mirror into space? It was to have the luminescence of 10 moons and was said to be used to heat the polar regions for agriculture. The mirror seemed to fail, however, and they say it burnt up in the atmosphere. HAARP has the ability to generate such a mirror effect by causing a plasma cloud in the ionosphere that can direct solar radiation to desired targets. I received a report that HAARP was tested as a meteor deflection shield. It seems a meteor was directed straight towards the facility. Could we have the ability to hurl meteors at our own planet with such precision? I looked deeper and found that the Anchorage Daily News reported such an event. A meteor struck the ionosphere, the clouds dispersed at 1,000 miles per hour, and then a sonic boom. Many of the people in Anchorage thought it was the end of the world and sought refuge in their basements. And 3 hours later, an earthquake struck.
But over all those years, only the name changed. The positions remain the same. By 1955, it became obvious that the aliens had deceived Eisenhower and had broken the treaty. Mutilated humans, yes, mutilated humans, were being found along with mutilated animals, and yes, mutilated animals, and those of you who doubt that this is taking place should leave your job, should leave your home, should do whatever you have to do, and go look for yourself, because it's important that you know it and that you believe it. These things were being found all across the United States. It was suspected that the aliens were not submitting a complete list of human contacts and abductees to MJ-12, and it was suspected that not all abductees had been returned, and this has been verified. The Soviet Union was suspected of interacting with them, and this proved also to be true. It was learned that the aliens had been and were then manipulating masses of people through secret societies, witchcraft, magic, the occult, and religion. After several Air Force combat air engagements with alien craft, it also became apparent that our weapons were no match against theirs. In November of 1955, NSC 5412/2 was issued, establishing a study committee to explore all factors which are involved in the making and implementing of foreign policy in the nuclear age. This, again, was only a blanket of snow that covered the real subject of study, which was the alien question. For, in fact, 5412/2 had, as I told you earlier, been written in 1954, when NSC 5410 and 5411 was written, and 5411 by secret executive memorandum in 1954. The study group was commissioned to examine all the facts, evidence, lies, and deception and discover the truth of the alien question. NSC 54/2 was only a cover that had become necessary when the press began inquiring as to the purpose of regular meetings of such important men. When the press asked Gordon Dean, somewhere near the end of 1954, why they were meeting and what they were studying, Gordon Dean says, "As of yet, we have no direction, but we're working on it." It then became necessary to find a direction and find a reason for these meetings, and that's exactly what they did. The first meetings began in 1954 and were called the Quantico meetings because they met at the Quantico Marine Base. See, one thing I knew, ladies and gentlemen, I know who they are. I know what they were called. All I had to do was find out who belonged to those names. And it's impossible to hold meetings of 36 prominent men secret over such a long period of time. The study actually lasted 3 years, not forever. It was a 3-year study, period. A study group was made up of 35 members of the Council on Foreign Relations secret scholars known as the Jason Society or the Jason Scholars. Dr. Edward Teller was invited to participate. Dr. Zbigniew Brzezinski was the study director for the first 18 months. Dr. Henry Kissinger was chosen as the group study director for the second 18 months, beginning in November of 1955. Nelson Rockefeller was a frequent visitor during the study. I'm going to read you the study group members now. For those of you who know who these people are, you're going to be amazed. Those of you who do not, I advise that you purchase a copy of my text, which will be on sale the minute that I finish my last word. And research everything that I'm telling you, and your own research will tell you that I am telling you the truth, and I don't have to do that. You see, I'm a witness. I'm not a ufologist, and I'm not by profession a researcher. I'm doing this because I want the Constitution put back where it belongs. The study group members were Gordon Dean, chairman, one of the most powerful men in the United States at that time. Dr. Zbigniew Brzezinski, study director for the first phase. Dr. Henry Kissinger, study director for the second phase. Dr. Edward Teller represented the scientific community. Major General Richard C. Lindsay, Hanson W. Baldwin, Lloyd V. Berkner, Frank C. Nash, Paul H. Nitze, Charles P. Noyes, Frank Pace, Jr., James A. Perkins, Don K. Price, David Rockefeller, Oscar M. Rubhausen, Lieutenant General James M. Gavin, Carl P. Haskins, James T. Hill, Jr., Joseph E. Johnson, Mervyn J. Kelly, Frank Altschul, Hamilton Fish Armstrong, Major General James McCormick, Jr., Robert R. Bowie, McGeorge Bundy, William A. M. Burden, John C. Campbell, Thomas K. Findletter, George S. Franklin, Jr., I. Rabbi, Roswell L. Gilpatrick, N. E. Hallaby, General Walter Bedell Smith, called Beadle, Henry DeWolf Smythe, Shields Warren, Carol L. Wilson, and Arnold Wolfers. Now, these aren't bad guys. They were a study group. And the first MJ-12 was not made up of bad guys. They were made up of concerned Americans. What happened later became bad. The yanking of power away from the president, the formation of a secret government, the sale of drugs to the American people, etc., etc., etc. And I'm going to cover most of those things before I'm finished.
Do you see the border? Do you see the purplish color that's made by the projection on the screen? Do you see that you can see sky through the back of the projection? You can see that it's not in space. You do see that that is not in space, right?
During the Watergate investigation, it was discovered that there was a plan originated in the White House to surface a submarine off the coast of Cuba and paint the second coming of Christ over the island of Cuba using holograms. Which is well within our technology today. The idea was that since there is a large Catholic population in Cuba, they would be so upset by this vision that this would saturate the communication channels, the telephone system in Cuba, long enough for an invasion to take place.
How interesting. I never heard of that.
Well, I think that's a classic in psychological warfare, but that kind of manipulation is well understood, and I have personally investigated several apparently genuine UFO cases where there was, in fact, a manipulation. My conclusion, the conclusion of scientists working with me, was that there was, in fact, a manipulation taking place, and that it was not a hoax on the part of the witnesses, but a hoax on the part of somebody much better organized than...
Here in Carcassonne, I suppose this is a real copy of Middle-Age stuff here. And what we see here, there he is, the lizard. Oh, look at the lizard. They had lizards in the Middle Ages? What is this? There's another one. In blue. What is this?
Básicamente en eso hemos sido convocados para la realización de...
Bueno, básicamente en eso hemos sido convocados para la realización de... Bueno, básicamente en eso hemos sido convocados para la realización de...
Muestreo, el traslado de las muestras al laboratorio de la universidad.
Bueno, básicamente en eso hemos sido convocados para la realización.
Other UFO researchers, you've written many authoritative books, and yet your perspective on the UFO issue seems rather unique in the sense that you don't seem to be jumping on the extraterrestrial visitors bandwagon.
That's what was the main point of disagreement with Steven Spielberg. When I met Steven Spielberg, he was about halfway through filming Close Encounters, and we had a long discussion about what UFOs could be. And of course, for him, the main point of the movie was entertainment, and it was appropriate for the UFOs to be extraterrestrial visitors. I think that from my own point of view, I'm going to be very disappointed if UFOs turn out to be nothing more than visitors from another planet, because I think they could be something much more interesting.
Something from another dimension of space or time?
I think what the UFO phenomenon is teaching us is that we don't understand time and space. Here are objects, I think we have to call them objects, that are physical, that interact with the environment, that cause effects on the witnesses, on the psychology and the physiology of the witnesses, and leave traces on the ground, and yet are capable of, appear to be capable of manipulating time and space in ways that go beyond what our physics understands today.
In your books, particularly your most recent book, Messengers of Deception, which is many years old, you suggest that UFOs are deliberately trying to manipulate our subconscious mind, to create a mythology in our culture about themselves, which is one of the reasons that they're both physical and concrete, yet very elusive at the same time. Do you still feel that way?
I think to answer that, I'm not trying to evade your question, but to answer that, you have to step back, you know, a little bit farther. What we know today about the UFO phenomenon is considerably more than we knew 20 years ago or 10 years ago. And we have to understand it at three different levels. And the first level is the physical level. And all we can say about UFOs at the physical level is that it's a lot of energy in a small space. In the space of this, if we could take the energy of a nuclear reactor and contain it within this studio, for example, you'd have something that would approximate what a UFO does. It's a lot of energy in a small space, emitted through light energy and through pulsed microwave energy. The second level is what happens to witnesses, what would happen to you and me if we were close to that source of energy. And again, now we're beginning to understand the physiological and the psychological correlations of a close encounter.
Yes.
And those have to do with a loss of the sense of space, loss of orientation. I've had witnesses tell me we were driving north when everybody knows they were driving south. They were disoriented at the time. Loss of the sense of time, people thinking that only 10 minutes went by and 3 hours went by. Very often effects on the skin, sunburns, I think that was shown in close encounters.
Yes.
Effects on the eyes, going from conjunctivitis to blindness, to temporary blindness in some cases.
And sometimes you've mentioned people have actually been healed of diseases.
There have been cases where after a UFO close encounter, it seems that the healing process had been sped up. Now there are known techniques now using electromagnetic radiation that will heal the fractures, for example, or will heal superficial wounds on the skin, but nothing that would heal as fast as the reported effects.
Yeah.
So we're beginning to understand at least the descriptions, the symptoms of the exposure to whatever UFO is. And then there is a third level, which is where the level I was addressing in Messengers of Deception, which is a social level.
The impact on our culture.
Yes, and the impact on our belief systems. And at that level, and that's something that's very difficult to convey to the believers in UFOs, the believers in little green men from space, that at that level it really doesn't matter whether UFOs are real or not. If enough people believe that something is real, then it is real in its effects.
In terms of its social reality.
In terms of the social reality, in terms of what people act according to their beliefs.
Yeah.
And that opens a question of, really at two levels, could the UFO phenomenon be manipulating us? Could it be a teaching system of some sort? Perhaps something that we are creating ourselves, perhaps a series of images that we are projecting. I think Carl Jung came very close to expressing that idea in one of his books. Or could it be manipulated purposely by people who have the technology to simulate UFO sightings? And people say, well, of course not. Who would do a thing like that? Well, I would remind you that during the Watergate investigation, it was discovered that there was a plan originated in the White House to surface a submarine off the coast of Cuba and paint the second coming of Christ over the island of Cuba using holograms. which is well within our technology today. The idea was that since there is a large Catholic population in Cuba, they would be so upset by this vision that this would saturate the communication channels, the telephone system in Cuba, long enough for an invasion to take place.
How interesting. I'd never heard of that.
Well, I think that's a classic in psychological warfare, but that kind of manipulation is well understood, and I have personally investigated several apparently genuine UFO cases where there was in fact a manipulation. My conclusion, the conclusion of scientists working with me, was that there was in fact a manipulation taking place, and that it was not a hoax on the part of the witnesses, but a hoax on the part of somebody much better organized than them.
So there are possibly all of these levels going on simultaneously.
Today, today, with the current technology, that would be possible. One of my interests, as you know, has been to look at ancient sightings, old sightings before World War II, for example, when there is really no confusion with modern technology. And if people described, say, in 1925 or in 1825, a disc flying through the air, then it can only have been very, very few phenomena could have produced it.
And there have been some well-documented sightings going back to the 19th century, for example.
There was, starting in 1896 and going into the spring of 1897, there was a remarkable wave of sightings of airships. Those were described as oval objects flying through the sky with lights on them. And of course, the people in those days could only compare it to dirigibles, could only compare them to airships. And those objects were capable of doing all the things that UFOs do today, including taking off very quickly and making 90-degree turns and landing and occupants coming out of them. And if nothing else, I think this is part of our folklore. This is something that we should be studying as part of our folklore.
Bright object, just basically hovering over Las Vegas, 5:30 p.m. Cylindrical object, a craft. We believe it could.
That's common ice and getting struck by some object. Watch this. And it's got to be my all-time favorite. I love you guys. God bless you. One more time. Common ice and getting struck by an object. It's still the mystery of the world, ain't it? We love you, friends. God bless. Hug the kids, hug the wife. Yo, Marine.
Say hi. Parece muito lindo os sóis. Ali, ó. Ali tem os sóis. Ali tem outro. Gente, eu tô mostrando, ó. Um ali e outro ali, ó. Vocês acham que vocês só tem um só aqui em Nova York? Ali, ó. Um. Nós não estamos mentindo, é verdade.
Yeah. I'll get you a bib in a minute.
They're ready for you. Just
Well,
let them out.
Put it for 5 and for 3 hours, so I'm going to give it about 6.
If you give it the earlier you give it in,
Yeah,
then
the next one is.
Yeah, and then we can.
No, I'll get it in a minute.
Yeah, look, still it's shining still.
Aliens are coming. Are you prepared?
Holy shit. Holy shit. Oh, it's getting funny.
Keep recording.
Oh man, I saw something there, Verna.
Keep recording.
Jesus.
Back in all the video?
Yeah. Holy shit, it's black now. Holy. That star, that's for sure, guaranteed. Holy shit.
See, maybe it's a satellite.
Погоди. Я тебе отвечаю, там что-то летало. Во-во-во. Вау. Офигенно. What the fuck? Офигеть! РЛО прям над нашим сраным городом. Блин, я знал, что они существуют. Слушай, они как будто разговаривают, да? Вообще клево. Блин. Офигеть. Где они? Все, пропали.
Hello, Sunsflare here. It is March 11th, 2012. We are looking at the SDO images of the sun from today using the AIA 171 filter and the AIA 304 filter. And my question to you is, are you seeing this? What is going on? We have a filament eruption going over what appears to be a black spherical anomaly with a twister tether. I have no idea what this is. I wanted to put the video out, take a better look at it, but just get it out there as quick as I could so everyone could take a look. I will tell you that it shows up better on the AIA 171, and that's with the gamma increased. If you pull the gamma back to the stock image, you don't see it as much, but it caught my eye to play with the filter, and when you increase the gamma, it's very interesting with that twister and the filament going over the black spherical anomaly. It is not affected. If that was something in the plasma field, strange that it would definitely be affected by the filament. So I don't know what this is. I want to look at it further. If you have any ideas, let me know. Thanks.
Aliens are coming. Are you prepared?
Hey!
Hello, my name is Alvin Peters, and I have a video that I'd like to show you today. This particular video was leaked to me by a contact that I have within the Sigma organization. And for those of you who don't know, Sigma is the primary source of disinformation on UFOs and extraterrestrial phenomena. One of the important things to note about Sigma is that videos, films that they have in their possession do not leave their possession. They stay there. And the reason for that is because they tell the truth. They're undoctored, unfiltered videos, and they're also tagged with a code which enables Sigma to trace where that particular film is at, how it's being shown, how it's being used. But because this is a video of a video, we don't have to worry about that. It's not our concern. So let me go ahead and show it to you, and I'll explain as we go along. Now what you see here is a Space Shuttle 1986 landing at Kennedy Center. What is obvious here is the bright orbs which seem to be accompanying the Space Shuttle as it comes in. What is important to note here is that the cameraman doesn't zoom in on. There's no panic. There isn't any kind of concern about these orbs. They seem to be following along in a non-threatening way, escorting, if you will, the Space Shuttle as it lands at Kennedy Center. As you know, these things have been called Foo Fighters, just bright lights, orbs, whatever. And they've been reported for many, many years by commercial pilots and military pilots alike. There's many cases of World War II pilots that have been accompanied by this particular phenomena. Also, commercial pilots over the years have also found them and seen them, and they followed them in. I think that what's important, very important to note, is that this type of work never sees the light of day. Never. So please, keep searching and stay true.
If you flew on Air France from Nice to London on January 28, 1994, your captain says he saw a UFO 1,000 feet long just outside your window.
It seemed to be a huge flying disc.
The now retired pilot is one of 14 men, mainly former government and military officials from 7 different countries, talking about their UFO experiences.
It disappeared in about 10 to 20 seconds.
This conference took place in Washington, and the cast of characters was almost strangely, well, conventional. One of the believers, former governor of Arizona, Fife Symington.
I saw something that defied logic and challenged my reality.
During a visit to Phoenix, Symington described to me what he saw.
If you had been here 10 years ago and standing out here and looking up there at the lights and the view, you would have been astounded. You would have been amazed.
The so-called Phoenix
සිට බුත්තල ප්‍රදේශයට ක්‍රමයෙන් පැමිණි බවයි ඔවුන් පවසන්නේ.
ප්‍රදේශයට ක්‍රමයෙන් පැමිණි බවයි ඔවුන් පවසන්නේ.
Hey!
Report last week on Mars. Here we will analyze the past week of weather as recorded from orbit from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and the data from the MAVEN mission as it becomes available. MAVEN entered orbit on December 8, 2014 and is now fully into its science phase at Mars. The Solar Energetic Particle Instrument has already observed significant solar activity both in the form of flares and coronal mass ejections from the Sun to Mars. MAVEN also generated a map of Mars's ozone layer from the lower atmosphere and has now provided a view of the escaping atmosphere of Mars, showing the loss of atomic oxygen, atomic carbon, and atomic hydrogen. In fact, the atmospheric pressure on Mars is so low, any water that percolates up to the surface turns to vapor and is rapidly blown away into space by the solar wind. With all this loss of atmosphere, we should start rethinking the idea of terraforming Mars. Not likely. Mars has an atmospheric density of 1% of the Earth and has no general geomagnetic field. Earth has a field that extends 10 Earth radii in the direction of the Sun and provides an ample bow shock and general field region that protects life here from all but the worst solar storms. The Mars Express mission by ESA revealed that Mars only has bubbles of magnetic fields dotting the surface and provides a vastly different interaction with the solar wind and mass ejections that has made us rethink the locations of landing and habitation sites on the Martian surface. Let's have a look at last week's weather, as seen from orbit from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. Last week on Mars, there was no increase in solar wind speed and there has been no coronal mass ejections that have reached the Martian environment for over a month. When we see them on LASCO, we will start following their progression out to Mars. Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter recorded common characteristics for this time of the Martian year. The large dust cloud over Iona and Serenium, generated from the local storms along the seasonal south polar cap, continued to spread westward early in the week before dissipating by week's end. Short-lived localized dust storms were observed in Chryse, Salus, Serenium, Cimmeria, Assidius, and the Phalegra Montis. High-altitude clouds occurred frequently near Eos, Chasm, and Valmerinaris, and northeast of Hellas. Water ice clouds associated with the North Polar Hood continued to be the predominant weather feature over the northern plains, with an occasional lee wave cloud, known for their ripple-like appearance, were observed on the eastern side of topographic highs, craters, and ridges. The southern extent of the polar hood stretched over Acidalia, Deuteronius, and Utopia. Afternoon conditions in Valmerinaris were hazy. Both rovers Curiosity and Gale Crater and Opportunity on Meridiani Planum experienced storm-free afternoon skies throughout the week. The bizarre Martian magnetic field densities to the west of the Tharsis region provided some protection from the ongoing solar wind streams that reached the Mars orbit and are evidently affecting the unprotected surface regions with greater severity than the magnetically protected region. Seen here from the ESA Mars Express mission, the bizarre auroral display was imaged once the spacecraft entered orbit and revealed the field regions in the area southwest of the Tharsis Shield region. As previously discussed, these bubbles of magnetic fields may be the only possible locations offering protection from solar radiation from manned missions to the Red Planet. They apparently moderate weather as well. The field directions, nanotesla intensity, and regions have been well mapped at this point, as seen in this projection. The strongest is about minus 60 degrees south latitude and 180 degrees east longitude, seen here in the magnetometer map southwest of the Tharsis region, about midpoint between the Hellas region and the Argyll quadrangle. The nanotesla strength field direction map shows the strongest magnetic field strength is centered at minus 45 south latitude, 180 east longitude. This is a likely site for the highest level of long-term habitation protection on Mars. Unfortunately, none of the American rovers currently on the surface are in this area and cannot directly monitor radiation effect comparisons. On the LASCO video over the time period, we see no coronal mass ejections of the Sun. It's pretty quiet, but we can also watch the ISWA record of the interplanet Enlil spiral showing directed energy as a strong flow increasing intensity of solar wind. Mars has a 95% carbon dioxide atmosphere and only reaches 70 degrees Fahrenheit at the equator in the middle of the summer, so atmospheric carbon has little, if anything, to do with atmospheric heating. On Earth, heating occurs by solar input, then carbon increases. If it was the other way around, the global warming gang would have an argument. They don't. Just like on Ben Davidson's Suspicious Observer site, it's the Sun affecting planetary atmosphere, not carbon. There is no petrochemical industry on Mars, and the Martians aren't driving cars and operating coal-fired plants. And Mars is in a deep freeze most of the time. Pollution is the problem on Earth, not carbon, and we agree with Ben. It's the same on Mars as on Earth. Only the Sun can significantly change a planetary's atmospheric temperature. So here are some shots of the rovers operating on the surface to close. It's the 3,191st day of the mission since orbital insertion of the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. It's winter in the Northern Hemisphere, and solar noon at Mount Olympus. See you next week with another Mars weather report from the ongoing data stream from orbit. We will be adding the MAVEN data as it becomes publicly available, but in the meantime, keep looking up and out there.
Forward. Let me read my prepared statement, and then we'll roll a short video that Captain McAndrew will talk about.
And when he talks about the video, he says in a verse, we faked it.
We faked it.
We faked it. We faked it. And the video claimed that they were test dummies that people had seen, and they weren't alien bodies. So that's sort of a pretty straightforward reversal. They've faked it. I don't know how else you could interpret that one. And
well, there's no other way to do it. And I remember when that story came out, and you could almost hear the laughter of people who have been following Roswell for a long, long time. This was one of the most egregious lies the Air Force ever charged one of its own to deliver to the public media, that the actual issue was a crash dummy. I mean, it was so absurd and asinine, it was embarrassing. That's how bad it was.
Oh, it really was. Yeah, it was shocking. And here we have another reversal from that same interview.
I'm sorry, I just don't have any information for that. All I know is what the Air Force did, and that if you overlay much of their claims and you look at the Air Force scientific research, you can see it's obvious that what we're talking about at Roswell.
And here he says, share a secret with NASA.
Share a secret with NASA.
Share a secret with NASA. Share a secret with NASA. So clearly, yes, something is there, and that reversal occurs right where he says the Air Force's scientific research. So clearly, something was shared with NASA. So.
Well, obvious intrigue, obvious conspiracy, obvious lies again. So it's the lie of omission. It's what they're not telling us that is crucial.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Now we're moving on to chat name of Colonel Philip Corso, who's since deceased, and he came out and wrote a book called The Day After Roswell, where he claimed he had seen alien bodies from Roswell. So here he says, forwards, I saw a body in Fort Riley, Kansas.
Saw a body at Fort Riley, Kansas, but I put that out of my mind until I could corroborate the information.
And here he says, I looked at it.
I looked at it. I looked at it. I looked at it.
So that's a congruent reversal. He's telling us the truth when he says, I saw an alien body.
What's really interesting about that, and is so often the case with reversals, is his tone of voice in reverse. He's very professional, He's matter of fact. He's reporting exactly what happened, like a military officer might. That's amazing.
Yeah, right, exactly right. And here he is again, saying, there was no doubt this was a body and not a test dummy.
There was no question in my mind what it was. I know the difference between a body like that I saw there and a dummy.
And here he says, they got it.
They got it. They got it. They got it.
They got it, meaning the body, the dead body.
They got it, meaning the body, yeah. So he's telling a true story. And in point of fact, all his reversals that he had in this whole interview were very congruent reversals. So there you go.
Interesting man, Philip Corso. He was a World War II figure who has, if you look him up, Philip Corso had quite a distinguished career, and people were rather shocked when he put this book out, because why would a man in the twilight years of his life want to risk a truly storied career in service to his country, a career military officer who served again through World War II and after World War II. So it was a very interesting issue.
Yes, indeed. All right, now we're going to look at some reversals on Michael Malin, who's the official photographer for the Mars Global Explorer. And many people have levelled charges at Michael Malin that he's been altering pictures and doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things. So let's see what the reversals have to say. And here we have the first one. This is a very long reversal, this one. It's about 8 words, or 9, 10 words, which is very unusual. Let's run it forward first.
But I can't be any more specific than that, any more than you could,
Hey.
طلع عنده هون يا مطلق يا شيخ هي راس المسيح وفي راس وراه عم يشد على سنينه وهي عم يكذب اذا بتلاحظ كانه عم يتعذب عليك وانا وين لا شوف وين شربت جاب لي تليفون.
So if you have a lost dog, phone, camera, wallet, phone, let us know. No, don't let us know. That was a very exceptional lost and found story.
Sandra.
Va, corre, Kia, va. Documental, cuando se encuentran de frente con la peor pesadilla de su infancia.
And the crows think as well, so they're heating themselves up next to the chimney, having a bite, nice and warm.
Hey.
Very highly classified government project that is ongoing and that affects every man, woman, and child in this country. People need to know what is going on. He also sent me some documents, he faxed them to me, that verify everything he said. These documents are classified material. There are some white papers from the Department of Defense, from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency known as DARPA, also from Naval Intelligence. There's also a document from the CIA. And I've looked over them and I've familiarized myself with them very, very carefully over the past few days while I'm trying to recover. This information needs to be released to the public. And what that information is this. In 1995, our government commissioned a project to place into the public water supply, into the public food distribution system, a very small device, a nano-sized device with a microprocessor. It is an electronic device, and it is about the size of 1 or 2 grains of sand. It took years to develop, but they developed it, they've perfected the technology, they've tested it, and as of today, according to their estimates, 85% of the population has one of these devices inside of their bodies. Now these, you could say you're infected, in other words. You have been infected with one of these devices. They're incredibly small, they can barely be seen with the naked eye. They have to be removed from the medium that they are suspended in. It could be food, it could be water, but if you take it out and if you put it on a table, preferably a black surface, and you look at it, you're going to be able to see it. It's very hard, it's opaque, but let me put it this way, you'd never know it was there. If you've consumed it, which you probably have, as I said, 87% of the population has one of these in their bodies right as presently, as the military has estimated. Okay, so what is it? Why did the military develop this device and put it in the water supply and try to basically infect the entire U.S. population with it? Well, it's a very simple device, folks. It is designed to kill you. It is designed to terminate you. That's what it does. It's very simple. It doesn't really do anything else. Now, how does it kill you? It goes something like this. It is, again, the size of a grain of sand or so, a little bit bigger. It is a nano device. It contains a microprocessor, contains a receiver, and it can receive a transmission, radio transmission. Once it receives this radio transmission, which is very specific, and can only let me put it this way, it is a frequency that is only our military uses and only knows about. It's not going to just be randomly activated while you're walking down the street. So it's activated by this signal. Now how do they do it? Well, their cell towers cover 98% of this country in terms of coverage. cell towers, radio towers. In addition to that, our military has spent about 5 years setting up a proprietary system, that of coverage, not in addition to the cell towers. So what they've done in any large population center, they have installed transmitters, very small, and they're in strategic locations. They cover every block of every large city and even small cities, and this has been set up over the past 5 years. The reason they want to do that is they want to be able to target these populations very specifically in a very small locality. Okay? Now, what do these devices do? Okay, they kill you. How do they do it? I don't know fully, but what they do is it induces flu-like symptoms in the body. It causes the body to release antibodies that, in addition to causing flu-like symptoms, it will cause your body to produce antibodies that are indicative of a flu virus infection. You will die within 10 to 12 days. The effectiveness, is what they call it in their documents, is 98%. That means 98% of people with which this device is implanted or they are infected with this device, once it is activated with the radio signal, 98% of people are dead within 10 to 12 days. 2% recover. And the recovery reasons are not fully known. It is often outside influences. It could be a malfunction of the device. Right now our military wants to get it to 99%. It's at 98% right now. Basically, if this device has been activated in a population area, let's say they use a cell tower to send a signal out, you're going to see everybody around you, including yourself, sick with a very severe case of what appears to be the flu. You'll go to the doctor, they won't be able to help you, it will continue to get progressively worse. Your lungs are going to fill up with fluid. In fact, that's going to be a symptom that will be very pronounced in all of these cases, and there's a reason for that. That is because the device, it enters the brain and it activates certain autoimmune responses that are indicative of a severe case of the flu. And this response is sort of like a runaway nuclear chain reaction. In other words, it causes your body to just absolutely melt down. So, again, it's very effective. It has been shown to work in 98% of the cases, and most of the time it just looks like a very bad case of the flu. A couple things I wanted to address before I go. Again, with this information, it's of the highest order of urgency. I hope you share it with family and friends. I hope.
There's no such thing as aliens. You're fine.
Hey. 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 Hey.
I know it sounds crazy.
Hey. Hey.
Aliens are coming. Are you prepared?
Hey.
Aliens are not your friends. Visitors that will come to this planet, people will look at and see something not from here You will see an alien. And it will not be your friends. You've been told, but you won't believe. You're mystified at the thought that something else is out there besides you. And there are interdimensional beings. But that is where angels are. That's where heaven's at. That's where hell's at. It's a whole different dimension. And there are different dimensions where each one can be found.
Tiho said TEPCO needs more tanks to store the contaminated water, but also mentioned the shortage of storage space. He said officials should consider options such as discharging filtered water into the sea. He urged them to come up with a plan to control the nuclear waste.
Awesome. He is such a nice guy, and I was kind of intimidated at first because I'd been watching Kira Sedgwick forever, and I'm like, oh God, I don't know, do I have the chops? And
I know it sounds crazy.
Hey.
Aliens are coming. Are you prepared?
A moth that resembles a wasp is less likely to be eaten by a predator. Good camouflage requires that an animal closely resembles the local flora, and any changes that occur to the plants in an area could be fatal to an animal that was unable to adapt to the new selection pressures.
Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Open your mind.
My friends and loyal subjects, we have worked together to overcome the greatest physical hardships the world has ever known. World War, drought, famine, pestilence, fire, earthquakes, and volcanoes of unprecedented violence. But we have prevailed, thanks to our fantastic computer technology and the intervention of His Satanic Majesty. Where, dear friend, was the loving God of creation during our recent perils? Was He helping mankind, the children of His creation? No. On the contrary, it is He who has visited these disasters upon us. And to you, God, God of wrath and destruction to mankind, I say, do your worst. We will prevail.
Yes. Hear you nothing that I say.
That's common ice and getting struck by some object. Watch this. That's got to be my all-time favorite. I love you guys. God bless you. One more time. Common ice and getting struck by an object. It's still the mystery of the world, ain't it? We love you, friends. God bless. Hug the kids, hug the wife. Yo, Marine.
Say hi. Parece muito lindo os sóis. Ali, ó. Ali tem os sóis. Ali tem outro. Gente, eu tô mostrando, ó. Um ali e outro ali, ó. Vocês acham que vocês só tem um só aqui em Nova York? Ali, ó. Um. Nós não estamos mentindo, é verdade.
Food soon. Tea time soon. Yeah. I'll get you a bib in a minute. They're ready for you. Just left them out.
Put it for 5 and for 3 hours, so I'm going to give it about 6.
Did you give it the earlier you give it in?
Yeah, with the next one is.
Yeah, and then you can have it.
No, I'll get it in a minute.
Yeah, look, still, it's shining and so. Oh, even Harris doesn't want this with some bubbles. What do you do? Look at all the table, look. I don't want this to feel bubbles.
In the river symbols of autumnal equinox, we should also examine the symbolism of Tiamat. Tiamat's earliest depictions are as upright walking, four-legged snakes with wings, frequently seen wearing crowns. Here we see twin Tiamats of this form holding twin corsair swords by the blades towards a single serpent coiled around itself in 6 loops with a head at both ends of its body. Just as the male doll from the earliest Uruk period depicted the same elongated head motif as the fish priests of Chaldea, so too does the female counterpart of that doll exhibit very similar facial features to a reptile, such as a serpent. She holds a small baby to her breast, and the baby appears to have horns. The reptilian motif has long been a symbol for Tiamat. In this Uruk period carving of a life-scale mask, we find the same reptilian features as the serpent symbolizing Tiamat. Just as Tiamat, symbolized by the winged, four-legged dragons encaging the twin-headed serpent, guards the tree of life, so are their guardians over the tree of knowledge. While the tree of life was symbolized by the twin-headed serpent, the tree of knowledge is a complex geometrical arrangement of 13 blossoms on a vine lattice around a central blooming trunk. While the guardians of the 15-flamed arched doorway were the fish-robed men symbolizing winter, the guardians of the 13 blossoming tree of knowledge are garbed as birds with the head of the phoenix and 2 wings. They water the tree of knowledge and pick the blossoms from it, and just as the dragons ensnaring the double-headed snake of the tree of life, these anthropomorphized avians also represent Tiamat. To return to the doings of the god while he sat on his cubic throne and was not riding the sky in his Faravarhar Vimana, when we finally see him equaled in stature, it comes from this low relief from Lagash. On one side sits the god, offering in his outstretched right hand the ring and the rod symbolizing kingship. On the opposite side sits a goddess, wearing the same form of turban crown as the god, reaching out to receive the offering with her left hand. Between them grows a single enormous potted leaf. Note that the god holds back his scepter flail. Next, we see another extremely ancient cylinder seal imprint, dating from 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. We see on the far right a tree with 8 branches, each with 1 leaf. To the left of this tree sits the goddess on her cubic throne, wearing a crown of crescent horns. She holds in her lap a young child with a single long forelock of hair. Below the child, at the goddess's feet, is a pit dug in the ground. On the opposite side of this pit from the goddess stands a man with short hair and no beard offering up a cup. Behind this man on the far left is another man kneeling down to adjust the lid atop a canister that sits on a short tripod platform. Above this is a shelf with 3 narrow vases on it. In this mid to late Akkadian cylinder seal, we see all these elements depicted in one scene. On the outermost flanks are the twin, bird-headed and winged men representing Tiamat. They apply their blossoms to the fish priests, who, in turn, apply the river symbols from the god above to a 15-stemmed, newly budding tree. Above, in the center, we see again the god in his Faravarhar Vimana, now facing the opposite direction he was when he arrived to be greeted by the fish priests. Here is a later post-Babylonian cylinder seal inscription showing 4 epic heroes, each alike Gilgamesh in facial appearance, kneeling to hold up standards bearing the symbols of the 4 seasons. On the left we see the orb form of Tiamat symbolizing summer, the water symbol representing autumn, the fish man symbolizing winter, and the crescent symbol representing the return once again to spring. A rising serpent marks the end and restart date per annum. As we shall see, the use of animalistic symbols to signify the 4 elemental seasons was a precursor to the Babylonian Dendara zodiacs, as well as Egyptian and Mesoamerican hieroglyphics, and began a trend that has not stopped since. Here we see the Ishtar Gate of Babylon, erected 2,575 years ago. It is decorated with low reliefs of bulls, signifying summer, lions with their tails up or down representing spring and autumn, and, representing winter, we come back again to Tiamat. In this image from a Sumerian cylinder seal, at least some 5,000 years old, we see the god standing upright on the left, identified by his beard. He displays the gesture of supplication toward Tiamat, depicted as a 4-legged serpent. On Tiamat's back is a platform or saddle, in the middle of which stands an erect pillar or column, at the top of which is a triangle pointing upward. The combined height of Tiamat and this pillar is equal to the height of the upright standing god. From a pre-Babylonian cylinder seal, we imprint this image, showing the god on the left, identified by his beard and turban crown, drawing back a bowstring to shoot an arrow toward a winged Tiamat, who appears on the right, rearing back on its hind legs. The image of Tiamat resembles a combination of the 4-legged serpent, lion, and bull motifs. Between the god and Tiamat, above the trajectory of the arrow, sits the winged disc motif of Ahura Mazda's Faravarhar. Beneath this, between the god and Tiamat, is a crowned and bearded supplicant, surrounded in a sphere offering 3 small orbs toward the god. The battle between the god and Tiamat is further depicted in this low-relief cylinder seal from the Akkadian Empire era. The god in the upper left shoots his arrow toward Tiamat, seen in mid-retreat, aimed directly at Tiamat's head. Again, we see Tiamat as an exospecies of zoomorph, resembling a combination of avian and reptilian characteristics, with feet and wings like a bird, and the torso and head of a snake. Behind Tiamat's turned head, in the direction of its body's retreat, we see a 7-rayed orb above, and below an 11-petaled arc. Beneath the feet of the god crouches a griffin, that is, a winged lion, which may depict the god's Farvarhar from the side. In this low-relief carving from the era of the First Babylonian Empire, Tiamat appears again on the retreat from the god. However, here their positions are reversed from left to right. Tiamat, on the left, looks over its winged shoulder at the god, on the right, who is chasing after Tiamat, carrying a bundle of 3 arrows in each hand. Tiamat appears as a combinatory zoomorph again, with the head of a bull, the neck of a snake, the front paws and torso of a lion, the back legs and 2 wings of a bird. The god appears with 1 foot off the ground, his customary beard and crown, and 4 wings. Here we see Tiamat as a combinatory zoomorph, again from the Babylonian wall carving. Note the manneristic attention paid to the thumbs on its front paws. The nails or claws on them are crooked. Here we can more clearly see Tiamat has the horns of a bull, the belly of a snake, and the back of a bird. Its snarling face appears in great detail with an emphasis on its bat-like nostrils and fangs. This statuette from the Akkadian Empire period shows a character very similar to Tiamat. This mixed zoomorph has the legs of a ram or goat, male genitalia, the paws of a lion, 4 wings, and the hairless head of a snarling lion. This statuette represents Pazuzu, the demigod of the southwest wind. There are similar miniature busts from this era that show Pazuzu in greater detail, with 3 concentric circles for eyes, an upturned nose like a pig, shallow cheeks, and a menacing set of fangs. Other zoomorphs include lion-headed upper torso busts with the neck and front legs of a dragon. As we see in this circular arrangement of glyphs from Babylonian Chaldea, the zoomorphs cataloged by the people of this era included an array of familiar animals alongside representations of combined trait beasts. We see in this zodiac a snake, a bird, a turtle, 2 beehives, a dog, and a scorpion. We see also 3 orbs, from left to right a crescent, a 4-point star emanating 4 wave symbols, and an 8-point star.